Okay, today's daf is Peitet and Pesahim. I'm going to start in Pechet at the two dots, which are several lines up from the bottom. Pechet Amud Bet. So we said in the Mishnah that we're talking about a case where a master sends a servant to fulfill the mitzvah of Korban Pesach for him, to purchase the animal, to offer the animal, etc. And what happens is either the servant forgets which kind of animal the master requested, whether it was sheep or goat, or the master also forgets, in which case things are even worse, because when they come back, in other words, if the servant forgets, he can make it tonight. He can make a condition and say, if my master meant for the goat, then the goat is his and the sheep is mine. And if he meant for the sheep, then the sheep is his and the goat is mine. But if he gets home and the master himself doesn't know, so then that doesn't help. Neither of them can eat either of the korbanot, because they don't know which one they were assigned to then. So we're talking here about the case where the master knows, but the servant doesn't know. So the question the Gemara deals with is Sheli. How can the Mishnah say that the way that the servant gets out of the problem is he says, listen, if my master wanted the sheep, then the sheep is his and the goat is mine. If he wanted the goat, then the goat is his and the sheep is mine. How can he say that? How can an Eved have property? A servant doesn't have the right to have property. Anything that he acquires automatically belongs to the master. So there's no way really for him to make such a condition. How can he make a condition that if my master wanted the goat, then the sheep is going to be mine? He can't make anything his, because he doesn't have legal right to acquire property. So the Gemara says, so Mashi kana Eved kana Rabo. It's a famous saying in Talmud and Halacha. Whatever the servant acquires, the master acquires. Amar Abai, Abai says, Holech etzel ro'eh haragil Rabo etzlo. Denichale betakanta derabeh. Basically what he would do is this. He can go to a ro'eh, to a shepherd who has a relationship with his master, who's friendly with his master, and who would want the best interest of his master. And he has the shepherd transfer the ownership of the sheep and the goat to the Eved on the condition that it not come under the control of the master. So in other words, even though the Eved doesn't have the ability to acquire something and it not become his master's, somebody else can be makneh, can transfer ownership to the Eved, restricting the transfer that it not go to the master.
But how does he... It's not his to begin with, the royal.
What do you mean? Yeah, it's the shepherds. The shepherd sells the animals. Okay, he's selling the animals. So he's friendly, so he's willing to make this arrangement. So he says, okay, whichever one of these is supposed to be yours, your master can't have rights in it. So in other words, he can make that arrangement as a condition on the sale, but the Eved doesn't have the power to make any conditions. So that's how we would do it. So now the Gemara says like this. So if the master forgot what he said, so now what happens? The Eved made this condition, he thought he was a great chacham. So he comes home with two korbanot Pesach. One that's supposed to be for him and one that's supposed to be for the master. And he says to the master, listen, I'm such a genius. I forgot which one was supposed to be yours, the taleh or the gedi. I can't remember if you wanted the goat or the sheep. So I made a condition. I said, if you wanted the goat, then the goat is yours and the sheep is mine. And if you wanted the sheep, then the sheep is yours and the goat is mine. So whichever one you wanted, you take that one and I'll take the other one. And the master says, that's very nice, except I can't remember which one is which either. So now neither of them can eat either one, because if the goat was really what the master originally wanted, so then he can't eat the sheep. And vice versa. So they're both stuck. So the Gemara says as follows. Amar Abaye lo shenu el shechach achar zrika de ba'idna de izrik dam hava hazil achila aval shechach lefnei zrika de ki izrik dam lo have hazil achila chayivin lasot pesach sheni. So I forgot to mention the upshot of that. So even though neither of them can eat from the Korban Pesach in that case, why not? Because maybe the goat is really the servant's, so the master can't eat it. And maybe the sheep is really the servant, so the master can't eat it. And same for the servant. He doesn't know which one is his, so he can't eat either one. However, the Mishnah said that they don't have to bring Pesach Sheni. Why? Because two offerings were offered. Definitely one of them was the master's. Definitely one of them was the servant's. We just don't know which one is which. So they can't eat it. But they definitely both fulfilled the mitzvah of offering it. And because they both fulfilled the mitzvah of offering it, neither one has to redo on Pesach Sheni. Very nice. However, Abaye comes along and says that that's only true if the doubt emerged In other words, if the problem emerged after the offer Okay, so that's the problem. Since the master forgot before the offering was even executed, so therefore there was never a time that the korban was valid. That's what Abaye is saying, and therefore they would both have to bring Pesach Sheni. Ika dematne la abraita. Some applied this teaching of Abaye to a different case that was mentioned in the Tosefta. Abraita. Chamisha shnit arvu orot pischehen ze bazeh. You have 5 guys that they mixed up the skins of their korbanot Pesach, because of course they would skin the animal when they would remove all of its meat and so on. They would skin it. And the skins got mixed up. So nobody knew which skin was which. And one of them was found to have a wart on it, basically. Some kind of a growth that meant that what? It was that korban was actually invalid. The only problem is nobody knows which one that skin was from. So after the fact, now we know that one of us didn't do the Korban Pesach. We don't know who it was. You now have to take all of the Korbanot Pesach of those 5 guys to Bet HaSrefa. You have to burn all of them because one of them is invalid. We don't know which one, and therefore none of them can be eaten because it's a balmum. It has a blemish. But none of them have to bring a Pesach Sheni. So we have to understand why that is, because you would think that at least one of them, every one of them has a doubt whether he really brought Korban Pesach. So why doesn't he have to bring Pesach Sheni? Okay. So now Amar Abaye says, when is this true? Only when after the offering was done, then the skins got mixed up. Because at the moment when they applied the blood to the altar, at that moment, the one who had the blemished korban could have known it was his, because they weren't mixed up yet. So definitely 4 out of the 5 fulfilled the obligation. It's just that it got confused later. However, but if even before the blood was applied to the altar, so then they would all have to do Pesach Sheni. Because if before the blood was even applied to the altar, the confusion already ensued, so that meant that there was never a moment that any of those korbanot were valid, because we already knew from the outset that none of them were going to be able to be used. Because we already knew that one of them was blemished, and we didn't know which one, and therefore none of those 5 guys could eat anything. Because we don't know which skin goes to which korban. So in the end, so if that occurred before the blood was sprinkled on the altar, or poured on the altar in the case of Korban Pesach, so then none of them could eat from it from the outset, and therefore none of them brought a Korban Pesach, and therefore they all have to bring Pesach Sheni. So now, the one that said that Abaye's distinction between when a doubt emerges before the sprinkling of the blood and after, so the one that applied that to our Mishnah certainly would apply it to this Braita. Why? Because in our Mishnah, what's the case? The case is that actually the 2 Pesachim were valid. There was nothing wrong with them. It's just that we couldn't remember whose was whose. So if in that case we say that if the issue of whose was whose emerged before the blood was sprinkled, if in that case they're totally invalid, then certainly in the case where one of them is totally invalid, we're going to say that if the issue emerged before the blood was sprinkled, that they're all invalid. However, but the person, but one might argue that just because the case of the skins, in other words, if Abaye's statement was made with reference to the skin case, you can't generalize from that to the korban, to the other case. Why? Because in the skins case, one of them is definitely invalid. Invalid completely, intrinsically invalid, because it's a balmum, it has a blemish. So we know that that's true, and if that became known, and the issue became known before the blood was sprinkled, it's definitely invalid. But maybe in the case of the master and the servant, where there's nothing invalid, it's just that we don't know whose is whose. It's just that we don't know. God knows. Right? We don't know. So maybe you could say in that case, in the eyes of God, definitely they each brought their Korban Pesach. They just don't know which one is which, and so they can't eat it. That's different than when one of these is a blemished korban. One of these is a blemished korban. That means that there's a definite invalid korban in the mix. Okay? That's totally different. Okay. So now the Gemara goes on. Amar Mor, the master said, that in this case they are exempt from bringing Pesach Sheni. So why? And that's talking about where the mix-up occurred after the blood was sprinkled. Why are they exempt from Pesach Sheni? The Gemara asks, but wait a second. There's at least one of these 5 guys didn't fulfill the mitzvah. because we know that one of these 5 guys, his korban had a blemish. So definitely out of the 5, at least, definitely one of them didn't do it. We just don't know which one. So how can we exempt all of them from Pesach Sheni? So the Gemara says the problem is like this, that Dila Ifshar, Hechi David, there's no way to do it. There's no way when you have a doubt that you can have 5 people and only one of them needs to bring the Pesach Sheni that you could possibly have get out of the problem. Why? Because Letikol Chad V'Chad Pesach Kamayti Chol Nazara. The Arba'a Minayu Avdilahu. Okay? So the problem is that you can't have all 5 of them bring Pesach Sheni because 4 of them are bringing a non-korban. You can't just bring a korban Pesach on Pesach Sheni because you feel like it. If you're not obligated, then it's called Chulin La'azara. It has no sanctity. It's not a korban. You can't do it. So you can't just say, well, let's have all 5 of them bring the Pesach Sheni. You can't do it. So then maybe Leitikol Chad V'Chad Pesach. So you can't do that. So Leitikulu Chad Pesach. So then why can't all 5 of them say, listen, one of us didn't bring Pesach Rishon, we don't know which one it is. So let's all 5 of us get a Pesach Sheni. We know at least one of us needs to bring it. So it definitely has sanctity. We'll bring it. And we'll all eat it. Problem is, so then you're going to have the problem that 4 out of the 5 people are not really eligible for eating the Korban Pesach. And a Korban Pesach can only be eaten by people who are obliged to bring it. So that won't work either. Hi, mine. Is that really logical? What we'll do is like this. It's no problem. Each person will bring a Pesach Sheni and say the following. They'll say the following condition. If I was the one who brought the invalid Korban Pesach and Pesach Rishon, then mine is a Korban Pesach Sheni. If not, okay? And if my original one was good, hashta nevi shlamim, right? The one that I'm bringing now, it'll be a korban shlamim, right? And they'll make a condition. I'll bring it and say, okay, if so you make a condition. So 4 of them are really bringing korban shlamim. We don't know which 4. 4 of them are bringing korban shlamim. 1 of them is bringing a korban pesach, but it all looks the same because they just made a condition. So everybody fulfills the mitzvah one way or another. So why doesn't the Braita suggest that solution? Why does it say that we exempt them from Pesach Sheni? Why can't we do this? Gemara answers, Live shot, nope, you can't do that either. Mishum diga hazev ashok tekohanim. So that because when it comes to the achlele, that when it comes to korban shilamim, the hazev ashok, the breast and the leg, the foreleg of the animal have to go to the kohanim. Korban Pesach, the eaters of the Korban Pesach have to get the Chazev Ashok, not the Kohanim. So what are you going to do? If you eat it, you're saying this is a Korban Pesach. If it's a Korban Shalamim, you're stealing from the Kohanim, you can't do that. And if it's a Korban Pesach, you're not eating part of it and you can't do that. So there's no way to do it. So then it says, I'll tell you. No problem. Let each of these 5 bring a Korban Pesach on Pesach Sheni. Each of the 5 will make a condition. If this is a Korban Pesach, then it's a Korban. If I didn't bring a Korban Pesach, mine was the no good one on the first Pesach, this one will be Korban Pesach. If mine was good, then this is a Shalamim. And we'll join in our group a Kohen. And we'll give him the Chazev Ashok. So if it's a Korban Pesach, no problem. He had the Chazev Ashok part. And if it's a Shlamim, then no problem also. It's creative, right? What does the Gemara say? No. Hai Kohen Hechidam. What kind of Kohen is this? I David Pesach. If this is a Kohen that did Pesach Rishon, so Dilma Hai Pesachu. That doesn't work. Because maybe he already had Pesach Rishon, then he can't eat this if it's a Pesach Sheni, and it might be a Pesach Sheni. That's the whole thing. We don't know. Is it Pesach Sheni or is it Shalamim? And on the other hand, Ve'id la Avid Pesach, and if he didn't do Pesach Rishon, this Kohen that you're adding onto your group, Dilma Shalamimhu Ve'lo Avid Pesach. Maybe it's a Shalamim and this Kohen is not doing a Pesach. In other words, the problem is that since the status of the Korban itself is in doubt, we don't know if it's Pesach Sheni or it's a Shalamim. So anybody who's not obligated in Pesach Sheni can't eat from it. If it's really a Pesach Sheni, the Kohen can't eat from it. If it's really a Korban Shalamim and this Kohen needs a Pesach, then he won't fulfill the mitzvah. So it just doesn't work. So then the Gemara says, "V'neti kol chamisha chad kohen dilo avad Pesach." Here's a creative solution again. Let's have each of these 5 bring one kohen, like we said before. Dilo avad Pesach, that didn't do the korban Pesach on the first Pesach. V'nimne ilavei hani chamisha pesachim. Okay, and let's do this. What we do is we take we have each of these 5 guys bring a kohen that didn't do Pesach Rishon, right? And that way, what we do is that the nimni ilavei hane chamisha pesachim, and we put 5 pesachim, and mima nafshach ika had delo avid pesach. Okay, so the Gemara says what we do here is, let's see, what exactly is this case? How is this case different than the one before? That in the previous case, what did we do? We had each one of them with a kohen, right? And the problem was that we don't know what the status of the kohen is. If he already had korban pesach, he can't eat a korban pesach. If he didn't have korban pesach the first time, then he needs korban pesach, and it's no good for him to have a shlamim. So now the Gemara is suggesting. Let me just see what the correction is on the side. Now the Gemara is suggesting that all 5 of them. Oh, I see. That's what it is. It's unclear in the Gemara. All 5 of them bring one kohen who didn't do korban pesach rishon. V'nimnei ilavei hane chamisha pesachim. And they should put him on 5 pesachim. I don't know what that means actually. What is it trying to say here? Let me read it here. Now it's not clear to me what this case is now. V'nete kol chamisha chad kohen delo avad pesach v'nimnei ilavei hane chamisha pesachim. They should appoint him. Yeah, you have to go? All right, see you then. Chamisha pesachim. Yeah, I don't understand the case now. I'm forgetting what this case is.
Why couldn't they just bring one kohen?
Avad pesach v'nimnei ilavei hane chamisha pesachim. How is this going to help? Oh, I see what it means. Okay. I see. I see what it means. Okay, yeah. I see what it means. All right. So basically, what he's saying is that that all 5 of them should bring the korban pesach. Now I understand. All 5 of them should bring a separate korban, not like what we said before, right? All 5 of them should bring a separate korban. Each one brings his own with a condition, like we said before. Right. Maybe this is a shlamim, maybe it's a korban pesach. Only one of them is really a korban pesach. We know that, right? Only one of them is a korban pesach, right? Because only one of them didn't bring pesach rishon. So what happens is you bring one kohen who definitely didn't do pesach rishon, and then what can he do? If he eats the chazev vashok of every one of those 5 korbanot, so it's no problem, right? Because 4 of them he ate was a shalavim, it's no problem, and 1 of them he ate was pesach sheni. Okay, that's what it means, right? That's what it must mean. So that makes sense actually. That makes sense. So we know he ate pesach sheni. Right. He didn't eat Pesach Rishon, so he's allowed to eat Pesach Sheni. And we also know that the other 4, so whichever one of the 5 is a Pesach Sheni, it's no problem. He fulfills his obligation too, and the other 4 are Shlamim, so it works perfectly. So that's what the case was. Sorry about that little detour. All right. So now, so then what's the problem? Why doesn't the Braita allow us to solve the issue in this way? Why does the Braita say that we have to that we have to exempt all of them from Pesach Sheni when we see that there's a creative solution of bringing the one kohen and having him eat all 5 of them? So the Gemara answers, no, it's a different issue. Where were we? That the problem is that mam'id b'achilat shelamim, that because the time limit for a korban pesach is only the night of Pesach, right? You only have one night, whereas a korban shelamim is the 2 days and one night in between. Right? So you're actually shortening the time limit of Korban Pesach. In other words, if you're going to apply, if really for the 4 Korbanot that are actually Shalamim, you're cutting their time short. Because you're requiring it to be observed shorter.
But you don't have to eat it at the end of the time, you can eat it within that time. So what's the difference if you cut it short?
That is true. But the issue is, so Rashi explains that actually. He says, okay, you only have the day and the night. You really only have the night because you're not allowed to eat during the day. So he says, and then he says that, and you have to burn the leftovers. So the problem is you can't burn it. Because the next morning you have to burn the Korban Pesach Sheni if you left over.
You can't burn the Shlamim before the 2.5 days or whatever.
Right, you're not allowed to. So that would be the problem. Now, why can't you just say, okay, so eat it all up then? I don't know. So why can't we do this? All right, fine. So we have the problem that we can't do this thing where we make a condition that maybe it's a Pesach, maybe it's a Shlamim, because the Shlamim has a longer time limit. We don't want to cut the time limit short. But why can't we bring Motar HaPesach? Motar HaPesach means that either somebody set aside a Korban Pesach and then lost it and had to replace it with another one and then found the original. So it's called a leftover. It was never used. Or it means that there was leftover money from the Korban Pesach because the price went down. He had too much money designated for Korban Pesach. Now he can buy a Korban. That Korban, Motar Pesach, is brought like a Shlamim. Okay? So it says, why can't we do that? Venema, and he could say like this: and what can the person say? He can bring it on Pesach Sheni and say, if and the time limit for a Motara Pesach is the same as Korban Pesach. We only have 1 day and 1 night. We don't have the 2 days. So we say like this: if the one that I originally brought was Korban Pesach, this is a Shalamim. Okay. And if, so he'll say, if mine was a Baal Mum, it's a Pesach. Okay, so in other words, this will solve the problem, because unlike a Shalamim, a leftover Pesach Korban has only a 1 day limit. It doesn't have the 2 days. So you don't have the problem of cutting the limit short. And you'll say, okay, if I really have to bring Korban Pesach for Pesach Sheni because mine was the no good one on the first Pesach, so then this one is really my Pesach Sheni. I'm using a leftover Pesach as my Pesach Sheni. If I already fulfilled the obligation, then this is just a Korban Shlamim that I'm bringing according to the rules of Korban Pesach, which is what you do with the leftover Pesach. You bring it as a Shlabim.
You need to do that if it's not really a leftover Pesach.
That's exactly what the Talmud asks next. So you have a Talmudic mind already. Are you telling me we're going to separate a leftover Pesach on purpose? Where are you going to get this leftover Pesach? Right? So the Gemara answers, it means we have to find somebody who has one. Right? That's the only way we can do it. So since we can do that, though, there's always some money lying around. There's always some opportunity to do it. So that could have been a solution. Why doesn't the Braita suggest that they find someone with leftover Pesachim and do it? Right. Why does the Braita say there's no solution, we have to exempt them from Pesach Sheni? So the Gemara answers, it's because of Semicha. Because leaning, you have to lean with your full weight on a Korban Shalamim, including a leftover Pesach. You have to lean on it. A Korban Pesach does not get leaning. In fact, you're not allowed to lean on it because it's using the Korban for something that's not a mitzvah. So the problem is, if it's a Korban Shalamim, you have to lean on it. If it's not a Korban Shalamim, you can't lean on it. So that's why they can't bring a Korban on Pesach Sheni and say, if I need to bring this, it's Korban Pesach. If I don't need to bring it, it's Shlamim. No can do, because are you going to lean on it or not? So I'll give you a solution. Why can't you bring a leftover Pesach of a woman? Women are not obligated in Semicha. They don't have to lean on the Korbanot. So what could we say? Find a woman who has leftover money from her Korban Pesach and use that, since she wasn't obligated, or find her Korban that she designated that was leftover, since she wasn't obligated in Semicha. Okay, you could say, alright, so definitely no matter what, I don't have to do Semicha, because if I'm doing it as a leftover Pesach, I don't have to lean on it because it was a woman's Korban. And if it's actually a Korban Pesach, then I don't have to lean on it because it's Korban Pesach. And since there's a solution, the question is, why doesn't the Braita suggest that solution? Ela mishum matanot. Rather, it's because of matanot. That when you bring them, matanot here doesn't mean gifts, it means the application of blood to the altar. That a korban pesach has matana achat, right? We read that in Ezehum Korban Shel Zvachim. You pour just one application of blood to the altar. Korban shlamim has shtayim shen arba, which means you go to the corners and you put it on the two corners in such a way as all four sides are covered, right? That's the way you do it. You go over to the what's it called? You go to the two diagonal corners, and that way you cover all four of the walls. You touch all four of the walls. So, what are you going to do if this is a korban shlamim? It needs two applications, which equal four. And if it's a korban pesach, you just put it in one place. So that's the problem. So, my nafkamina, what's the problem? We learned in the Mishnah, but the truth is that even a korban shlamim, if you only put one application of blood, you also are yotzeh. It's also good enough. B'diavad. So why don't we just tell you, listen, since you're not sure if it's a korban shlamim or a korban pesach, just put one application. And that way, these people can come. They'll bring the korban of women that's a leftover korban pesach. So therefore, there's no issue of simicha. And they'll make the condition, as we said before, as we specified before. And they'll bring the korban, and they'll just put one application. So the Gemara says, goes on and says, no, it's a different problem. There's a difference not in the number only, but also in the method. Korban Pesach, you take the blood and you pour it, you spill it onto the altar. You don't throw it. Korban Shlamim, you spritz it on, you throw it on. So my nafkamina v'hatanya kolam sin b'zrika shnetana b'shvicha yatsa. But didn't we also learn in the Braita that anything that you're supposed to throw the blood, if you spilled it, it's also good? The Gemara says, "Emar de kamrinan de iavad lechatchila nami." So basically, what the Gemara answers is, there's no way lechatchila. There's no way in the first place that you can do that. You can't suggest to somebody to spill blood that's supposed to be thrown. So since there's no way we can really create a condition and follow through with the condition where it's going to be absolute, where the performance lechatchila, okay, the performance in its ideal form is the same for both korbanot. In other words, we're going to be compromising one of them. Because if it's really a Pesach, we're not going to be doing exactly what the Pesach is supposed to be. And if it's really a Shalamim, we're not going to be doing exactly what the Shalamim is. So since you're going to have there's no way you can do exactly the same performance on a condition that will fulfill the ideal requirements for both. So therefore, there's no way to get out of the conundrum. You're stuck, and we're left with there's no way to solve the problem when you have 5 people, one of whom has not brought the Korban Pesach, and we can't tell who it was. There's no way for them to do anything on Pesach Sheni that all of them will be removed from the Safek. So therefore we exempt them. That's the conclusion. The new Mishnah says, somebody who says to their sons, he says, whoever reaches Jerusalem first, when I slaughter my Korban Pesach, he's the guy that I have in mind. He's going to be included on my Korban Pesach. It's a race. Once the first son reaches Jerusalem, they race up the mountain or whatever it is, they race. His head in the majority gets in. He is zocheh. He gets his portion of the Korban Pesach, but listen, but he brings along his brothers with him. So what does that mean? So the Gemara is going to explain this. So Shema Mina Yesh Brera. The first conclusion we can draw from this Mishnah, it would seem, and we've seen the Gemara try to draw this conclusion from several Mishnayot here already, is that Yesh Brera, you can retroactively clarify something. You can say, I'm not going to commit right now to those who are going to be able to eat from this Korban Pesach. I'm slaughtering it right now without committing. And I'm going to say, whoever later gets here first, he's going to be the one. So you're setting it up that it's going to only be clarified in retrospect, backwards. You see that it works? That's called brera. Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, not really. You can't really prove that. Why not? Because this is just a game. He's just playing with them. It's not a real condition. How do you know? Because dikanami, we can also see. The katane, because it says in the Mishnah, Umzakeh echav imo. that when the first brother reaches Jerusalem, his other brothers are included too. So obviously it was just a game. He was just trying to encourage them to get there fast. Shapir. If you're telling me that he appointed he really meant for all of them to be included, fine. So if you're going to tell me that really the father intended to include all of his children and he was just trying to encourage them to get there fast, fine, we understand. But if you're telling me that he really only intended for the first son who reached Jerusalem to be included, how could the others be included later? The Pesach is already slaughtered.
What does it mean by it's a game? It's a game meaning he didn't really intend that? Or does it mean...
He couldn't have really intended that only the first son would be included in the Korban Pesach, because it says that the first son is mizakeh everyone else too. When he reaches, everyone else is included too.
That's what I'm saying. In other words, because if he did intend, then the fact that it's a game is irrelevant. I mean...
Right, if he was really excluding the other brothers when he said that, so then there would be no way for them to be added later. It must be that he really meant for all of them, but he was saying whoever. He was just said the first one is going to be on. He didn't mean the other ones weren't going to be. He was just saying, he just wanted them to get there fast. Right? That's the point. So, and because we know that you can only change the assignments in the Korban Pesach up till the slaughtering. You can't add them on later. So he must have from the beginning meant for his entire family to be included. He just said this line about, whoever gets there first is going to be special, so they would come really fast. And we see a similar idea. Shema mina. So Tanya Nami Achivalos in the Braita. Maaseh v'kadmu banot labanim. There was a case where somebody said this. Said whoever gets there first, they're going to be on my Korban Pesach. And the daughters got there before the sons. Yeah. The girls beat the boys. What happened? V'nimtza banot zirizot. The girls were zirizot. They were very zealous about mitzvot. Ubanim shfalim. And the sons were ashamed. They were lowly. It doesn't say that they couldn't join in the Korban Pesach. It was just a test of who was going to get there first. Right? It was hit by shoe. They were embarrassed, right?
So that's a precedent for the game.
That's just a game. Yeah, it was just to encourage who really wants to be there first, but not that anyone was actually excluded from it. And since nobody was actually being excluded, it's not really a case of breira. It's not really a case where we're clarifying who's being included after the fact. Really, from the beginning, he knew who was going to be included. He just made it seem like a mystery so they would move faster.
But Matthias' objection was, if he did, then it would be.
Right, and then it wouldn't work. Apparently it wouldn't work then. Or we wouldn't know. We can't, in other words, the point is we can't prove from here that would work, that you could retroactively clarify. So now the next Mishnah says, you can add as many eaters onto your korban as long as there's a kazayit for each person. There has to be at least an olive's worth for each person. You can continue to add or subtract eaters from your Korban Pesach until you slaughter it. Okay? Rabbi Shimon Omer ad sheyizarek adam. Actually, up to the point that the blood is thrown on the altar, you can still change the assignment. Even after it's slaughtered, you can still change it. The Gemara says, "My kamash malan, what are you teaching me here? Ha kamash malan da'afagav the imni alav chavura zo chozerut v'nimni alav chavura acheret." The chidush of the Mishnah is that even if, let's say, 10 people signed up for a Korban Pesach, and number 1 left, number 2 left, number 3 left, number 4 left, and meanwhile spots number 1, 2, 3, and 4 are being filled by new people. Number 5 leaves, slot number 5 is filled by someone else. Number 6 leaves, filled by someone else. By the end, the 10 people who are enumerated on this Korban Pesach, not one of them was in the original group. And it's still okay. Okay? As long as you're still at a time where you can change the assignment. It doesn't matter that the original designation was 10 different people, and today it's 10 people who are totally different. It's like the old question that we've seen it in Shas before. Right? The old question of how much do you change about something till it's a totally new thing? Right, if you take pieces out. Remember we learned about that in Masechet Shabbat, right? When you take something apart and you replace pieces, like with Tuman Taorah, you replace pieces. After a while, the entire thing is a new vessel, because you kept fixing it. You keep fixing it. After a while, it's a new thing. Yeah. Right. So that was the issue. So here too, you keep removing and replacing. So by the end, the 10 people are a totally new group. It doesn't matter. It's okay as long as you're still within the time limit. It doesn't matter that the original group was totally replaced.
So the issue is not new because it would be new even if it wasn't 10, even if it was the majority.
Right, I'm just giving the majority. I'm just giving the example that nobody in the original group is still there and it's still acceptable.
Yeah.
Okay, so Nimnina Moshkin Dideh Mat Shishachet. Amar Abai says Machloket Limashech. The Rabbanan say Mehiyot Misem Mechiyuted Dese. Over Rabbi Shimon Savar Mehaviyated Dese. That the Machloket between Rabbi Shimon and the Chachamim is as follows. That Rabbi Shimon, they're only talking about withdrawing from the Korban Pesach. In other words, you have the option to withdraw from a Korban Pesach until the blood is spilled, according to Rabbi Shimon. According to the Chachamim, only until it's slaughtered. Once it's slaughtered, you can't withdraw anymore. So let's say you signed up on 2, and you're waiting to see, who is signed up on each to decide, because there's a girl you liked, she's being signed up on 1. You want to see which one, so you can be at her table. So you're waiting, you're looking, and then at the last one you say, I don't want to be on that one, I want to be on this one. Right? So if it was already slaughtered, according to the Chachamim, you can't withdraw. Or according to Rabbi Shimon, you have up until the blood is spilled. The blood is applied, okay? Poured, right? So that's halakha according to Rabbi Shimon. What's the reason? Because the Chachamim say, it says, Michyot miseh. And the rabbis say, Mechiyuted deseh. As long as it's alive, you can still withdraw from it. According to Rabbi Shimon, Mechiyoteh mehaviyated deseh. Until the avodah is completed. Okay, so according to the Chachamim, the sheep has to still be alive. According to Rabbi Shimon, as long as the avodah hasn't been completed, you can still withdraw. However, to join, but when it comes to adding yourself on, let's say you saw that the girl is on a certain Korban Pesach, I want to add on to it. If it's already been slaughtered, even Rabbi Shimon agrees, you cannot join a Korban Pesach. Once it's been slaughtered, you can withdraw according to Rabbi Shimon, even though it's already been slaughtered, but you can join unless it's still alive. And why? Because it says tachosu b'michsat nefashot, a counting of souls, meaning that you have to have an official list of who's signed up, right? And then it says tachosu v'hadar. Afterwards, the pasuk says tachosu. Allah said tachosu in Aramaic means to slaughter, right? So they interpret that as meaning it has to be that the assignments are made before the slaughtering. So everybody agrees that to join a Korban Pesach, it has to be alive. The question only is to withdraw from one, according to Rabbi Shimon. You have until the avodah is completed. According to the Chachamim, once it's slaughtered, that's it. There's no turning back. Now the Gemara says, Tanya Namiyachi, we also learned in a Braita, that you can join and you can withdraw from it until it's slaughtered. Rabbi Shimon Omer Nimnin ad shishachet. Rabbi Shimon said, I agree, you can only sign up until it's slaughtered. However, but I say that you can withdraw up until the blood is poured. Okay, that is what Rabbi Shimon. That's what Abaye said, but it's actually explicit in a Braita. We turn to Peitzet Amud Bet, the new Mishnah on the top. We're going to have a very interesting case here. Very interesting situation.
But in that case, that means that you can assign and withdraw immediately.
Right.
After it's slaughtered. In other words, you're saying
you can sign.
It's like so you cannot assign. You can only assign when the animal is alive, right?
You can only get onto it when it's alive.
Get onto it when it's alive. But the same Gemara says you can withdraw
even after it's slaughtered.
So
according to Rabbi Shimon only.
Right. But if we hold to position together, then you can say, okay, fine, and then as soon as it's slaughtered, you withdraw.
Right. So what? According to Rabbi Shimon, you can withdraw after it's slaughtered.
You can achieve the same thing. That was what does the not being able to assign. In other words, you're saying, so they're talking about the switching.
Right, switching.
They're talking about the switching. But you could still, assign and then say, no, okay, I don't want this.
Right, you can back out.
You can back out.
Right.
If you're double joined.
Right, if you're double joined.
But you won't have the opportunity to get onto the other one.
Let's say you join two. Right, you have to withdraw from one of them. So let's say you signed up on 2 just to see, because you want to see which one the girl's going to be on, right?
Right.
And then, but now before you had a chance, one of them was slaughtered already. It's too late. You can't withdraw now. You have to withdraw from the one that wasn't slaughtered yet. You can't withdraw anymore, according to the Chachamim.
You cannot withdraw because
It was slaughtered already. Once it's slaughtered, it's too
We
late.
just said that's withdrawing. You can do it until
Only according to Rabbi Shimon. I'm just saying according to the Chachamim.
Okay, good. That's all. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
According to the Chachamim. So now we're up to Amud Bet. So the Hamimane imo acher b'chalko. Let's say you invited 5 people over to your seder, right? You're all on the same Pesach. The problem is, what if one of them brings a friend? Right? So you divided up the Korban Pesach and the cost between 5 of you. But then one of them subdivided. He sublets his Pesach. He says, "Listen, I'm going to subdivide mine. Since it's more than a kazayit per person, I'm going to divide. I want to share with my friend. He's going to come too." So it says in that case, "Rashayin b'nei chavura liteno et shelo." Let's say your 4 friends. In other words, you come. You're number 5. You show up with Bob. Nobody likes Bob. They said, "Listen, we're going to give you your piece. You go sit over there, buddy. I don't want you to sit here." It's no problem. They can do that. And then they can give him his. Theirs, he eats his.
How can he join after the offering was made?
He joined before. They just didn't know.
Oh.
He joined together through the guy who was already on, and yeah. So the Gemara asked, they asked the question. That's very funny. A group of 5 that the hands of one of them was nice. What does it mean? It means he's a pig. He eats a lot. Okay? Yadav yafot. He has nice hands. He takes a lot of food. Everybody knows that when he comes, there's certain people you invite over, they take a lot of food, There are people like that, we've seen some of them here. They come, they pile the plate, So Baushi Yomrulo, maybe can you say to that guy, take your fair share and get out. Because we're 5, right? We joined on the Korban Pesach, but you know that there's one guy, he always takes 10 times as much as everyone else, and he's going to dominate the meal. So we tell him, here's your 1/5, have a nice day, goodbye. Can you do that? So that's the question. Maybe we'll say, he can say to them, listen, you let me join on the Korban Pesach, you can't exclude me like that. That's not nice. You accepted me as I am. Everyone knows I'm a pig. Right? Oh, Dilma, maybe Matzule memarlei ki kablinan letikunei zviha adata deachalt feminan lo kablinach. Maybe they could say, listen, we only welcomed you because we needed somebody to complete the Korban, because you need a certain number of people, because you don't want to have leftovers from Korban Pesach. You're supposed to eat the whole thing. That's why we accepted you. But not so you would eat more than everyone else, just so you would eat your fair share. So we don't know. What's the answer? Can he say to them, listen, you accepted me without conditions, so you got to let me eat as much as I want?
It's a package deal.
Right, it's a package deal. I'm a pig. Or they say, no, listen, we only accepted you to complete an obligation. We don't want you here otherwise. Tashma coming here. We can learn it from our Mishnah. What does our Mishnah say? That if you had 5 guys, or however many, I'm just making the number 5, you had a group of guys, okay, that they can say to the one guy, here's your portion, go eat by yourself, because he brought a friend along and they didn't want the friend. So, now isn't it the same as the guy who wants to eat more than his fair share? Now, if you're going to tell me that the guy who eats a lot can say to them, you accepted me as I am, let me stay with you anyway, so why can't, in this case, in other words, just like the case, in other words, if it were true that the guy who eats a lot can demand acceptance no matter what, so the guy who brings a friend along should also be able to demand acceptance and say, listen, it's just the same as somebody who eats a little bit more, so I brought a friend. He also signed up on the Korban Pesach through me. I shared with him my portion. So he's also allowed to sit with us, just like you accepted me, accepted him. But it's just like a person who eats a lot. I'm eating 2 of us will eat a little bit more than one, but so amrei lo deotchani. It's different because having a new person is different than one person who eats a lot. Because the one person who eats a lot, okay, there we might be able to say that he could say, well, you accepted me as I am. But bringing a new person into the fold, it's a different story. Maybe they don't want another person. The meal's going to drag on longer. He's a new guy. He dominates the conversation. He's going to talk a lot. He's going to hold up the works. I don't know. There are other issues. When you bring a new personality, it's not just the amount of food. It's a personality. You bring a new personality. So, because even if you're going to say that the two of them together will only eat like the amount that one person would eat, let's say they both are very, they're not such big eaters. The guy brought along a friend, and they're going to eat each of them only 50% of what a regular person eats. Still. In other words, let's say the guy said, I brought my friend because I know I can't eat my whole fifth. So I wanted him to come and eat a half of my fifth. Okay? So they said to him, but it's not about the amount of eating. It's about, we don't want a enesh nukhra. We don't want a stranger with us. We don't know this guy. He's,
But it is about the amount of eating too.
The Gemara is saying the Gemara is saying that
It's about the amount of eating.
no, because the Gemara is saying that even if you're going to say that the amount of eating wasn't an issue, they still could say to him, "We don't want your friend here." Okay, but if a person, in other words, but you can't prove from that maybe if I came and said, "Listen, you know that I eat 10 times as much as an average human," and you still have to accept me because you accepted me in the group.
Sure you can.
That's
You're
different.
claiming it's not about you with the big hands, or claiming that it's not about the amount of eating. That's not what determines things. That it's not.
No, the Gemara is saying that there's two different issues. Just because if I invite a stranger along with me, they can exclude me. Just because that's true doesn't mean that if I'm a pig, they can exclude me because they know that I eat a lot. Because I can still argue, you accepted me, right? You accepted me.
And your acceptance of me is not based.
It wasn't conditional.
on 1/5.
Right? It wasn't conditional. You said I could come.
Right.
You can't now say, well, we eat over there. Imagine you invite a guest to your house. And you say, okay, here's your portion, go sit in the other room because we know you eat too much. No, they're going to say, what do you mean? What kind of invitation? What kind of invitation is that? All right?
But the differentiation.
No, here they're partners, they're not invitation.
Because you could also counter argue that you accepted me as I am. I come with an appendage, which is my friend.
Yeah, but he doesn't. It's not an appendage. I mean...
He's always with me. I don't go anywhere.
Yeah, but we accepted only you. We never talked about your friend. That's the thing. We accept that. If that were the case, maybe it would be different. But
yeah.
Okay, so Tashma. Here's the next attempt to prove the case here. Hashamash achal kazayit basar b'tzarat tanur. If the shamash, the attendant, eats his kazayit of meat next to the oven, in other words, he doesn't sit with everybody else because he's the attendant, but he has to eat korban pesach. He's Jewish, so he eats korban pesach by the oven. He should make sure to fill his belly from it because the rule is you can only eat the korban pesach in one place. You can't move around. So if the group wants to be nice to him, if the group wants to be nice to him, they should come eat with him too. They can come eat with him by the oven. In other words, they won't neglect him. Okay? Now, what does that show you? Ratzu'in lo ratzulo. That if they want to come eat with him, they can. If they don't want to come eat with him, they can say, you take your portion, we're going to sit by ourselves. Right? So, va'amai, why? Nema lehu, we can say to them, hakabiltun, you accepted the shamash, the attendant, to be part of your group because you're sharing your korban pesach with him, right? So how can you make him sit in a different place? They should be obligated to sit with him because he can say to them, hey, you told me I was with you in the korban pesach, now I'm sitting here by the oven, you guys have to join with me. You can't tell me, here's your portion, go sit by yourself.
Is there an obligation to eat together?
Not necessarily.
So why is that an issue?
Because he's not getting to participate in the whole meal. He's just being given his piece and he's sitting alone.
So it's not an obligation. Why is that?
It's really defining the rights of a group.
The rights of a group member, exactly. It's defining the rights of the group member. I mean, what kind of shareholder am I in this Pesach that you make me sit in the oven while you guys are eating the whole thing?
Retroactively, you may say, well, then I wasn't part of the group.
Right. I mean, what kind of group member am I? But I have to sit in the kitchen and you guys eating out here. Right. That's exactly what it is. So shani atam da amre le, because they'll say to him, no. Ki kablinach adata din nitrachach kaman lemitrach lan ledidach lo kablinach. Listen. We agreed to include you because you're working for us. We didn't say that we were going to work for you. Meaning, it's like if the help are allowed to eat from the meal, like let's say at a wedding, they let the waiters and everything, they get to eat from the meal, from the caterer. Sometimes, they let them eat. But they eat in a separate place. They don't eat with everybody else. So what if they say, what do you mean? If I'm part of the meal, I want to come in. They say, no, you can't come in. We're not going to serve you and treat you like one of the guests just because you're partaking of the meal. It's a different story. But here we're talking about someone who is a full-fledged member of the group and is being excluded. That we can't prove from the case of the shamash. So Tashma, you don't want to leave because it's a good story. Tashma, hear the next part. That it says in a Braita that if you have a group that one of them eats a lot, they are allowed to say to him, take your portion and go out. So that's explicitly answering our question, that you're allowed to do that, even though it's just a matter of how much he eats. It's not a matter of bringing a friend. Not only that, even 5 people who made a regular, ordinary meal as partners. They said, let's do Purim Seudah together. Let's do Rosh Chodesh meal together. They're partners. They can say to him, okay, take your fifth and go. Because if you sit with us and share, you're going to eat more than your fair share. Okay, they're allowed to do that, even in a regular meal. Shema Mina. You can see from that you're allowed. When you are a group member, the other members of the group are allowed to say to you, take your fair share and go. So my velo'od, why does it say velo'od, not only Korban Pesach, but even a private meal? Lo mi baya kamar. It means it's not necessary to say, Lo mi baya Pesach, not only in Korban Pesach, where they have a legitimate answer. They can say to him, we only wanted you as part of the group to fulfill the requirements of this Korban. We didn't want you to sit with us at the table. But really, even a regular meal where the guy can say, what do you mean? You can't tell me that you only wanted me to be one of the 5 members of this group in order to fulfill the requirements of Korban Pesach. There is no Korban Pesach. You wanted me as a companion. Still, they can still kick him out if they know he eats too much. Some say, we didn't have this question. We know the answer. You can kick the guy out. That wasn't the question. We had a different question. Whether members of a group that are eating the Korban Pesach are allowed to separate into subgroups or not. Tashma, we come in here. Yadav yafot in and yadav yafot lo shemamina. So the Gemara says, really what we wanted to know is if you have a group eating the Korban Pesach and they want to divide into cliques. Okay? Can 5 of them go in one room and 5 in another room? The answer is the only time you're allowed to exclude anybody from the group, the only time you're allowed to subdivide the group is if one of them eats more than his fair share, if there's a legitimate reason. But if there's no legitimate reason, the group has to stay together. Now we have the great story, this cute story. Rav Papa and Rav Huna, bered Rav Yoshua. Rav Papa and Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yoshua, arivu rifta b'hadei hadadei. They partnered in their meals. They shared the expensive meals together, their lunch. It wasn't a Korban Pesach. Okay? What happened was, though, that ad achil Rav Huna bered Rav Yoshua chada. In the time it took Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yoshua, to eat one piece of bread, achil Rav Papa arba. Rav Papa ate 4 times as much. So this is no fair. Amar le palegli. He said to him, listen, we got to split up. We 50-50. You take 50%, I take 50%, because you're taking 4/5 and you're only paying 50%. That's no good. Amar le kabiltun. He said, what do you mean? You accepted me as your partner to pay 50%. You didn't say I could only eat 50%. Right? It's like you go out to dinner with a group. It's always an issue. You know, well, what did you order? What did you order? We have to pay 50-50. It's always a problem, right? Eitive, they raised an objection. He raised an objection. Kol hanei tiyuvta v'shanei kiddushaninan. So Rav Papa brought all of the objections that we just read. In other words, from our Mishnah, where you see that the members of the group are allowed to exclude somebody who brings a friend along. From the case of the shamash, where you see that the group is allowed to exclude the shamash. If they don't want to sit with the attendant, they don't have to. So he's saying to him, listen, I don't have to sit with you. I'm not stealing from you. You paid 50%, I paid 50%. Take your 50% and go. I don't want to sit at the same table. You're going to take all my food. So what did he say? So he answered him. All the answers, right? He said, well, one is talking about where you bring in extra friends. I'm not an extra friend. I'm the original guy. I'm not the shamash. You can't say that I'm only here to work for you. You can't say it's Korban Pesach. You only wanted me to fulfill the Korban Pesach. It's not a Korban Pesach. Right? So, he brought the case of the Chavura. So he said, no, that's Korban Pesach. This is not a Korban Pesach. You can't tell me you only wanted to split with me because of Korban Pesach. What Korban Pesach? So then he showed him finally the Braita that says that even if people get together for a voluntary meal, and they shared the expense, that they can say to one of the guys, you eat too much, get out of here. So we showed him, it's a proof. The Braita says, I'm allowed to say, as a group member, as a partner, I'm allowed to say to you, I'm not taking away your fair share, take your fair share and go. And so what does he say? So then, palegle, he left. He left. He said, okay, you proved that halachically you have the right to say go, and I'm going to go. Azal arev bahadei Ravina. So what did Rav Yoshua Rav Huna Braid Rav Yoshua do? He went and he found another partner. This time it was Ravina. And Ad'akil Rav Huna Braid Rav Yoshua Chada, in the amount of time that Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yoshua, would eat one piece, Achil Ravina Timanya. Ravina ate 8 pieces. Oh, he has no luck. Before it was only 4. Now he eats 8. So he's only getting a 1/9 of his money's worth, or he's only getting, he's taking 8/9 of it. He's taking 8/9 of the food.
He's not too fast. He eats too slow.
So Amar, what did he say? Mea papi v'lo chada Ravina. I'd rather have 100 Rav Papas and not 1 Ravina. I was, sometimes you'd go from the frying pan into the fire. Right? They say don't jump from the frying pan into the fire. It goes from bad to worse. So he thought it was bad with Rav Papa, but you never know what you're switching for. He traded for Ravina, and now he gets only a 1/9 of the food instead of the 1/5 that he was so generously receiving before. So be careful what you wish for. That's the